Apartment demand tailwinds continue to look very good in Salt Lake City. Is that translating to meaningful rent growth for the local apartment market? Welcome to Apartment Market Dynamics from MPF Research. I'm Jay Parsons, your Salt Lake City update. Recently, a client asked me a good question, a very good question, in fact. Where have you been wrong? And one spot where we've definitely been wrong is Salt Lake City. And I'm proud to say there's very few spots where that's the case, but Salt Lake City is definitely one of them. Rent growth levels here have just not come in as good as we had expected. We thought Salt Lake would rank among the leaders for rent growth in 2013, and it certainly has not. Let's show you some underlying fundamentals before we get to those rent growth numbers, starting with the employment story. Take a look at this table here showing net job change since the start of 2008. These are the top 6 markets by that measure in the west region of the country. Number 1, San Francisco. Number 2, Denver. 3, Salt Lake City. 4 through 6, San Jose, Seattle, and Portland. And really, it's the first half of that list that looks really impressive. Net job growth of around 5% in San Francisco, Denver, and Salt Lake City. So Salt Lake is right there among the elite markets in the West by a very important measure, jobs. Now, not coincidentally, 5 of those 6 markets that you saw rank as 5 of the 6 top markets for annual rent growth nationally in 2013. The one exception, though, Salt Lake City. Rent growth of 5.5% to 7% in those other 5 Western markets in 2013, but just 2.7% in Salt Lake City, putting it a couple ticks below the U.S. average. And that 2.7% number was actually a bump from what Salt Lake had seen earlier in the year. Annual rent growth got as low as 1.3% earlier in 2013. So what gives? Well, it's not necessarily an occupancy problem. With good job growth, apartment demand remains solid, though not spectacular. Occupancy did trend down some in 2013, but the overall rate is still quite healthy at 95.3%, and that decline traced not to weak demand, but to supply. And when we look at reasons why the apartment sector has underperformed on rent growth, supply may be the best reason to explain why. Take a look at this chart here, and what it's measuring is ongoing construction relative to the total size of the apartment base. We've got Salt Lake City in red being compared to Denver and to the U.S. overall. And what you see is that in 2009, 2010, 2011, apartment construction dropped off dramatically across the country, even in a market like Denver, which wasn't even hit that much during the recession. But construction levels in Salt Lake City remained elevated for far longer. In 2010, 2011, Salt Lake averaged a construction expansion rate of just under 3% compared to the national rate just below 1%, and then it picked up even further when conditions improved in 2012 and 2013. And here's what that means. Nationally, and in places like Denver, the slowdown in construction came just as apartment demand really started to pick up in 2010 and 2011. So when new supply finally began hitting the market in 2012, and really more so in 2013, there was a lot of pent-up demand meeting that new supply. In Salt Lake City, though, that new supply was a steady stream throughout 2010, 2011, so that new demand was being met by supply, meaning that demand didn't get pent up like it did elsewhere. And on top of that factor, Salt Lake City has also seen a very brisk pace in home sales growth. And while this market is certainly transitioning to one that is more favorable for Gen Yers with the more apartment-centric lifestyle, the general preference in Salt Lake City remains single family, which makes Salt Lake a little bit different from those other markets that we looked at in the west region of the country. So what does that mean for 2014 and beyond? Well, we still like Salt Lake City very much, and we think it's a great market for the long term, but we have ratcheted down our expectations for 2014 specifically. We're forecasting rent growth of 3.3% for the next year. Strong, but not strong enough to put it among the elite nationally. And that wraps up for Salt Lake City. So until next time, for Apartment Market Dynamics and MPF Research, I'm Jay Parsons. Thank you for watching.
Want more? Go deeper with NPF Research's apartment market reports. From a national level, down to individual metros, to specific neighborhoods, NPF Research has been providing unparalleled apartment market intelligence to the multifamily industry for almost 5 decades. Learn more by contacting us at 877-284-4938 or visit www.npfresearch.com and click on Market Reports.